Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum Milner.
And this is a podcast, A La Latina.
The playbook to succeed being your authentic self.
Today, Jennifer Salinas.
Jennifer is the EVP and Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel at Cerence AI, which provides voice AI to more than 50% of the cars worldwide.
And here are the 3 key takeaways of this episode. Number 1, the art and technique of knowing your value. As much conversation there is about know your value, there is no way for us to find the roadmap. Find it here.
Number 2, as one of the most senior Latinas in the AI world, she argues that the playing field has been leveled and this is the time to get on it. And she gives us a playbook on how to learn to be AI literate.
And number 3, how a girl from a family of farmers that was a victim of domestic violence environment was able to turn that pain into ambition, drive, and success so that she can become the C-suite level executive that she is today. All of that and more here at A La Latina.
Stick around. Before this episode starts, go to alalatina.com and sign up for our newsletter. We've put together a ton of career advice and worksheets that you can download to manage your career and get to the top in half the time
with half the bruises. A La Latina. Today, the incredible Jennifer Salinas.
Jennifer is the EVP and Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel at Cerence AI. She's also on the board of a nonprofit called Bottom Line, which helps first-generation students get into college and supports them all the way through getting their first job.
And we are delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here as well.
Let's start with you, your background. What made you be who you are and what you do today? Tell us all about you.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll try. And so I think the most important thing was just my upbringing, what made me who I am. In fact, I would say my very humble beginnings is honestly why I do what I do, why I serve my community, why I continue to believe that's super important, giving back. So I was born in Los Angeles, in San Pedro, but I lived all over the broader LA area. And my grandmother lived in a city in Los Angeles called Bell Gardens. And so it's right next to East LA and Cudahy and those other places. And she moved there in I think around the 1960s, late 1960s, early 1970s. And she lived there until she passed away in 2008. And so that's where all of our family would come together and have our parties, where I had my kids' parties. And, it was a very, very, very tight-knit community. I mean, she would, I always joke around that my grandmother had many jobs. I didn't know that she had all these jobs because I always felt like she was available to us. But she always had these side jobs too. She would make raspados, and sell them for 25 cents. She'd make pepino con chile limon and sell them for 50 cents. And the neighbor across the street would make tortas. And the neighbor up the street would make chicharrones. We were always feeding each other, of course, Mexicanos, right? Mm-hmm. That's just kind of in our, ingrained in who we are. But we were really tight. And whenever there was a problem, people rallied around each other and took care of each other and lifted each other up and then celebrated each other's wins. And that was so important to me to see that, just how it was more than just us, just more than you, right? You never did anything just based on what served you. You did what was best for the community as a whole and your family. And so that was so important to me, just always kind of family first, community first. To this day, that's just how I operate.
And your grandparents immigrated to the country?
Yeah, as did my mom. So my grandfather did not. He passed away in Mexico when my mom was about 12. At that time, you could go back and forth, all the time. They worked in the fields. But my mom came here, I think she was either 12 or 13. And she was born in Mexico City. My grandmother was from Guadalajara. Anyway, my mom worked in the fields. She wasn't good at it. She always talks about how she was fired because grueling.
As a farmer girl.
As a farmer, as a worker, right. And she was it was grueling. Depending on the produce, and she would have, just be completely scraped up and bloody, right. And so it was just very hard work. And she wasn't really fast. And speed was everything, right. And so she went from doing that to watching the children, the children at the actual location, at wherever they were at, to then eventually being kind of sent off to watch a Caucasian's family, an hour away from where the rest of her family was. And so she must have been 14 at that time and became a nanny. And so, yeah, it was my mom. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, let alone me. Yeah, let alone go off to college and law school. But one of the things too, that's kind of something I used to not share at all. I was very kind of ashamed of it, but I grew up in a domestic violence home. And that made a huge impact on just wanting to make sure that whatever I did, I could leave a situation. I could take care of my kids. Like, my mom did not know her rights. She stayed in a relationship that was very, very abusive, not just to her, but to her kids. But she didn't know what her options were. And
Probably she didn't feel she had options.
she didn't feel she had options at all. She really didn't. And she didn't leave that situation until I was in my 20s. And so it was really difficult growing up, but it was one of those things where, I mean, I like to say that I turned speed bumps into jet fuel. Like, it just drove me that I was just going to be whatever I did. You know, my fourth grade teacher put a bug in my head that I was going to be a lawyer. So that was like, I was like, all right.
Someone told you.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
told you what to
Yes.
do because you
Yes.
had absolutely no
No
guidance,
idea,
so-
no guidance. Nobody
Yeah.
I knew was a lawyer. It was just not,
Or
you know,
anything,
or
right? Like,
anything.
yeah.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I just knew that whatever I did, I was going to make sure that I could take care of my kids and have options.
Why do you think that you had that so much ambition in you? Like, being the first person in your family to go to high school, like, was it your mom that pushed you? Was it you seeing the situation of your mom?
It's such a good question because I don't know. And, you know, there's like all kinds of studies about who you are, whether it's nature versus nurture, right? And I think the science now is telling us it's way more nature than nurture, meaning it's ingrained in who you are. You know, my mom said I've always was that way. I just always had this drive. It didn't matter how many times I got knocked down, I was going to pull myself back up and continue. And I was knocked down many times, and that's okay, right? That's just made me stronger. And I think it's also just surrounding yourself with people who believe in you and constantly telling you that you can do it. And that made a difference
But how
too.
did you do that? Was that by chance? Because, I mean,
Yeah.
how did you get surrounded by people that not only believed in you, but could guide you?
Trial and error,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think there are people who don't believe in you, and that also is harmful. And then I just like glommed onto them. So I'll give you an example. So I went to law school. I knew nothing, right? Here I am, like, made a decision of where to go based on, I had already had a child at that time. My son was a year and I was married. And I'm sitting in this room, it's orientation. I don't know anybody. I don't know what I'm doing here. I felt like it was the right decision. I learned to listen to that inner voice. And I see this woman and she's talking to everybody and she knows everything. And clearly she knows what she's doing. And I just immediately was like, I got to know this person, right? I just introduced myself and we hit it off. To this day, she's one of my dearest, closest friends. Her name's Chelsea Grayson. She became the CEO of American Apparel and then the CEO of True Religion. And she's just, you know, an outstanding person. And she shared with me the playbook. Like, I still had to do all the work. She didn't tell me how to do anything. I studied on my, you know, we studied together. We were study buddies. But she imparted knowledge, like the unspoken rules. And there's so many unspoken rules in corporate America, right? There just is.
Yeah.
And for her to tell me like the importance of grades, for her to tell me the importance of studying every single day, never letting up. If I didn't know that, and I didn't beforehand, I think my life would have been very different. And so I just listened. I just listened and listened and listened and watched and read and studied everything I possibly could to better myself. And, you know, I ended up graduating at the top of my class. And, but that relationship is just one example of many where I saw something and I was like, I can learn from this person. And I think that's the most important thing is that, you know, you never stop learning, right? You continue to have to grow. You continue to just go like, this is someone that could really teach me something. And that's appealing to me.
I want to acknowledge and thank you for your vulnerability. It's hard to talk about things that are taboo,
Yeah,
but are so present in our community.
absolutely.
And if we don't start opening them up and healing together as a community is so hard. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge, and I don't know exactly what made you take the decision and the courage, but I hope that, you know, like many other people actually are able to also open up on things that, you know, like this is not going to hurt you. On the contrary, I think it is going to be generationally
Thank you.
healing.
Thank you.
And on the piece of going and gravitating and learning. I think that pain makes you a better learner. When you're like lost in a way and raw
Right.
and open, you're like listening to your teacher by far more carefully.
Yeah.
To saying like, you should be a lawyer. Yes, this sounds like
Exactly.
medicine. This is something.
Tell me
like-
exactly.
Tell me exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I had an insatiable appetite for learning. I was a sponge, right? And you're right. Pain was definitely something. I mean, when I look back, I'm in law school. I have a baby. I have a marriage that's not going well. My father is mentally ill and just going in and out of rehabs, and just, it was bad. It was so bad. How did I graduate the top of my class? Like, how? Right? Doesn't compute when you think about it, right? If you look at like all statistics, I should have been something different than where I am right now. But that drove me, and I talk about it because we need to remove the stigma of that, right? We need to be able to have those conversations and tell people this doesn't define who you are. This is not determining your next course in life. Right. You make that decision.
And I think that actually it's psychology, it indicates dysfunctional families and pain have two outcomes, right?
Yeah, for
Either
sure.
criminality or negativity or brilliance.
That's right.
And I think that for so many of us, when we're coming from shaky grounds, whether politically or family-wise, and all the barriers that are surround us, let's choose on brilliance. So guide yourself by voices that seem to know
Right.
what
Right.
function looks like.
Yeah.
And is.
Yeah.
So mental health is a key issue for you early
100%, early on. And you hit on something that was really, I call it discernment, right? Like, I had to learn early on to kind of walk into a situation and assess it and determine, is this healthy for me? My faith was very, very big part of my life, and it still is a big part of my life. And I want to say spirituality. I want to say more than like religion, right? It just was, my grandmother would, like, if there was something bad, she'd go put an egg under the bed. Like, there was all this rituals or whatever, but it taught me that spirituality was super important. And so listening to that inner voice, listening to something and discerning, is this good or is this bad? Is this healthy? Is this not healthy? Has really been, I would say, something that's been ingrained in who I am and has helped me really figure things out. What's the right course for me? What's not the right course for me?
But having someone giving you the playbook is giving it to you right there.
Yes.
What was that playbook and how has it changed throughout time?
Oh gosh, the playbook at that time was very tactical, right? It was study every day. It was get good grades. It was network, which I absolutely hated. I'd go into these rooms of people that looked nothing like me, and I never felt like I belonged. Most people were Caucasian. My dad didn't want us to speak Spanish. So my grandmother taught us how to speak Spanish. Like, she would talk to us only in Spanish. So people ask me, do you speak Spanish? I'm like, I do. Like, I can order food. I know how to clean everything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, basic stuff. But I would never feel comfortable speaking in a business setting in Spanish just because it's Spanglish, But anyway, in the legal field, I never felt like I belonged to any particular community. Does that make sense? Like, because of my circumstance, it's a very elitist profession. But, at some point in my career, I think I was about 10 years in, I just said, you know what? I don't care anymore. This is who I am and all of me. And that's makes me who I am. And I just became very open about my circumstance and how that drove me to where I'm at. Because I never wanted to be in a room with someone who came from my background, that was younger, that felt like they couldn't make it because somehow that defined who they were. Like, I never wanted that person to feel that way. I always wanted to make sure that if there was someone in that room that I was in that had that circumstance, that they knew that that wasn't going to be a detriment to them.
And is there any of the like moments or circumstances that you grew up with that you feel like have helped you in your career? Because like you just said something that we could completely flip. You said, I didn't belong, right? I'm not Mexican enough. I'm not American enough.
That's right.
But like the other way of looking at it is I can be Mexican if I want to, and I can be Caucasian if I want to. So how did your upbringing made you like maybe a better lawyer?
Yeah. So two things. One, I didn't sweat the small stuff. I mean, there are problems and then there are real problems, right? So that was one thing, just based on my background. But to hit on your point, being in a global company, I can navigate anything. I mean, that was what I grew up with, right? I grew up in a bicultural environment where my mom, Mexicana and all of that came with it, and my dad, American, and all of that, and not having this kind of American first mindset, like, oh, it needs to be a certain way, that when I was, most of my clients were foreign, not just in Latin America, but in Asia and in Europe. And I think it's in large part because I didn't come at it like it has to be done a certain way. Americans could be really like forceful and not really read the room. Some Americans, right? They just come in and they're like for a lot of bravado and just
Imperialistic.
yeah, absolutely. And I just didn't have that. And I think that's in large part because of my upbringing.
So,
Absolutely.
I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about your career, because you went from
LA.
Yeah, LA.
Abuelita,
I had a
lawyer.
baby in law school, and now I am in the C-suite. So something happened in between.
Yeah,
Can
a
you
lot.
tell us, quickly walk us through your career, but more importantly, what were the moments that defined your career?
Oof, that's so
Because
good.
now I'm like a topic that's really in my mind a lot lately. It's this phrase of every decision is, you have a 50-50 chance, right? Of like, it works, it doesn't work.
Right.
So sometimes like you made like a tiny decision and then you don't end up where you are. So what were the decisions you made that made you be here with us, being
Yeah.
a role model?
So there were a few. That's such a great question. So the first one is when I went into law school, I wanted to be a family law lawyer. I really felt like I needed to do something to help women who were in similar circumstances to my mom. But I worked at a public interest law firm when I was in law school, and we would go to these domestic violence shelters and to provide legal advice. But it was mostly counseling more than anything else. It was too tough. I couldn't do it. It was too close to home. And I realized then that just couldn't be the path for me. And so early on, I knew go in a different direction. I also had the benefit of doing really well in law school. So that opened a lot of doors. I mean, I had kind of all the big law firms coming at me.
So really well because you had great grades.
I had great grades.
And great grades matter.
Oh my gosh, more than
Okay,
you could
amigas,
possibly.
listen to what she's saying.
Oh, yeah.
Study, great grades.
Study,
I tell
study,
my
study.
kids grades don't matter. Disregard.
Yeah.
Great
Well,
grades.
in law school.
In law school.
Because in some schools don't even give you grades.
That's
no?
right.
So,
Well, in law school, I think they do it differently now. But in law school, you're graded on a curve.
Yeah.
So there's no grade inflation, right? Like college, everybody can get an A. No. In law school, you grade on a curve, so you have to kill it.
Yeah.
You have to be on that
better than the others.
better
Okay,
than the
amigas,
others.
kill it.
Kill it.
Okay.
Kill it. So that gave me a lot of options. And then, I went to law firms, and, when I was in one thing that I, again, always observing, right? So I realized that if you have your own clients, the sky's the limit. So having your own book of business, which I think is true in many fields, made all the difference. You can
Network.
network. Get out there. I used to joke around that I was a mist maker before I was a sprinkler maker, before I was a rain maker, right? I started small, and that was okay. And that's the other thing too. Stop focusing on what it looks like. Do what matters to develop yourself, whatever that looks like. Here I am now. I'm a partner at a law firm, and I get a phone call
yeah.
from someone I absolutely respect, Horacio Gutierrez, who's now the General Counsel of Disney. He was either...
Oh, yeah, I love him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He was my mentor. He was phenomenal.
wow.
Him and I worked together. I was involved in the HMBA. I eventually became the president. But at that time, I was just on the executive committee. And I worked with him on a Microsoft project. And he was very complimentary. And so he reached out to me and said, I think you will do great in-house. And I'm like, what? I never thought of that. I was like, I'm a partner. I'm about to be equity partner. And, he saw something in me, and we had long conversations about it. And he's like, I think just the way your mind works, you would do really well in the corporation as opposed to being at a law firm. That was a huge decision for me because, one, it's a huge pay cut initially. Like going from being a partner to going in-house. I mean, when I say huge pay cut, I mean, I was going to be making a third of what I was
And
making.
you took it.
So I interviewed for the job, and I came down. There was two of us. I did not get it, but it put a bug in my head. And I was like, maybe he sees something that I really need to look at that I'm not seeing about myself. So fast forward a few years later, Lenovo, the computer company, was one of my clients. And they reached out to me about interviewing for the head of global litigation. Again, also going to be a huge pay cut. It was going to be relocating from the West Coast to the East Coast to North Carolina. I'm an LA girl, right? I'm going to North Carolina, and I was going to have a boss. I hadn't had a boss in a very long time. As a partner, you have partners, but you don't have a boss.
You have 2,000 billable hours to do a year.
Right.
But
Yeah,
not a
something,
boss.
but not a boss.
That's
right.
your boss.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
timesheet.
Yeah, exactly. That is so true. I have a funny story about that. But in any event, I saw, just having worked with my clients for such a long time, I did feel that I needed to be on the inside. I would use this analogy that it was like a cake. Like by the time I got the problem, the cake was done. At best, I could put some icing on it, but I didn't help bake the cake. And I felt like my skill sets would have been better served in a corporation. So anyway, I took the leap of faith, went there.
But wait,
To
you're
Lenovo.
not selling
To
it.
Lenovo.
You're not selling it to me at all. If somebody tells me I'm gonna give you a cake, you're gonna put the icing and say you bake the cake, I'm gonna be like, that's the job I want.
And you're going to be paid 2/3 more than if you bake it.
So why did you like? What's the upside of making the cake from
Yeah,
scratch?
it's a really good question. I mean, it's never been about the money for me. I have to love what I do. I have to really love what I do. I mean, I think that's the biggest lesson. And I could continue on that path. I was a successful partner, equity partner at this point, but I didn't love what I was doing. It was rote. It was like the same thing. And I wanted something different. And I knew at that point that I wanted to be the general counsel of a company, of a public company. So I was very clear with my boss, like, look, I'm taking a major pay cut. I'm changing my entire life. I want to be your successor or the general counsel somewhere else. Now, obviously, I have to prove that I have the goods, right? It's still meritocracy. But I wanted her to commit to me that she would help me fill some skill gaps. That was probably the first time in my career where I was very intentional about telling people what I wanted and how they were going to help me. And she committed to that. And
But
she
like
did.
how? Like did you get it on paper? Like did you
No,
like
it
what
was- it
happens?
was
They
good
give you
old,
an
like-
offer and you're like, okay, I have the offer. I'm gonna sit and talk to you
Right.
before I accept the offer
That's
to tell
right.
you, okay, now you want me, now I'm gonna tell you what I want.
Yeah,
That's-
exactly. And so it was a little bit more fluid than that, but that was basically it. And so I said, I'm gonna do this. One, because internally, I believe people need to bet on themselves, right? Take those risks and bet on yourself. And two, she gave me her word, and I had heard good things about her. I mean, you got to do some diligence and make sure that the person that you're talking to has a history of taking care of people. And I had heard good things, and she did. I mean, I came in and it was remarkable. I mean, I started out as the head of IP litigation, not even reporting to her directly, and within months, I became the head of all litigation, global litigation
For Lenovo.
for Lenovo, and reporting directly to her. And then about like a year and a half in, I got an opportunity to interview to be the general counsel of one of the business units, which I absolutely needed. Like I was saying, to fill some skill gaps, I needed that experience. And I interviewed for it. My understanding is I was the only internal candidate, and I got it. And then I was still the head of global litigation and the general counsel of that business unit. And so again, was very clear, like, this is what I need to do. This is what these are the gaps I
This
need
is
to
the
fill.
path.
This is the path, right? And so then I got opportunities that would come my way, and didn't feel like it was the right time. And I think that's really important. You have to look inward and ask yourself, are you really ready? I think a lot of people think that they're ready and really don't know what it takes. And so I
to
did
be like at the top.
to be at the top.
Like
Because
the-
you have to be able to have that calming force, and you can't let stress get the best of you. And not a lot of people do well under that kind of pressure. And I love it. I thrive in that kind of environment.
Of course, we're Latinas.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. When the chancla is flying, when there's
Yes.
when there's
Whatever.
all of the things you have to.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Right.
How many years were you at Lenovo?
Almost 4.
Almost 4.
Almost 4. Yeah.
And then so you were practicing as an external like
20 years.
20 years, then you went for 4 years to Lenovo, and then you made the big leap of
Yeah.
being at the top of the food chain.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
Got
That's
it.
right.
And did you know technology before you went to Lenovo?
Oh, yeah.
So you've always
Always. So I was one of those kids that just, I would take apart a radio. I was always like, my family would joke around. I would go and fix anything. I loved technology. I loved science. I excelled in science and math. I
Somehow it's stereotype, but I can see that.
Yes.
You can?
Yeah, right?
¿Por qué?
I'm like,
that too.
I
Why?
don't know. I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, can you fix my computer? Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
No,
I did.
totally.
Yeah.
You need
No,
something.
but AI totally makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like it's a brand match.
It totally is. And so when I was in college, I worked I sold hardware and software. And when I was in school, nobody told me about IP. Nobody told me about patents and trademarks and copyrights, and that you could get your degree in math or science or computer science or electrical engineering and still go to law school.
Yeah.
So I took the conventional path of getting my degree in political science. So for me to go into the IP space without the technical degree was like unheard of.
It's very complex, this
is.
area of IP, and it kind of set you up for all the litigation and everything
everything.
that's going to happen now with AI and
Yep.
the
Yep.
intellectual property.
Yep.
Okay, so you get a call from a company that, had you heard of this company before?
No, I had not. So I get the call from a headhunter, and it was really funny, actually. I think I had just had back surgery, and I some of the best interviews I've ever had, I was not really completely there. I was like on pain meds or whatever. Like I always think about like,
yeah.
exactly. But it's funny. I think it's because like I'm just calm and I don't have all the noise in my head, right? To kind of, doubt and all that stuff. But anyway.
Did you take anything today?
No,
because this
no.
is going really well. Actually. This is
No,
going
no,
really
I did
well.
not
I
take
think we're
anything.
going to hire you.
No, I did not take anything today. That's so funny. But anyway, one thing I did know, I didn't know about the company, but one of the things I did know, and I think I always pride myself on this, is kind of seeing where the world is headed, right? So AI at that point in early 22, January of 2022, not a lot of people knew about it.
Yeah, not generative, right?
Not-
Like there was some
right.
AI, but not generative AI.
Correct. Certainly not generative AI, that's for sure. But I felt like the auto was the next smartphone, right? So if you think about what smartphones have done to our world, that's going to be the car. So you're going to be able to get into a car and it's going to be your assistant. You're going to be able to get into it and say, not only take me here, but make my nail appointment, go and order the food that I want for tonight. And it's going to know your habits so well that it's not even something that you have to even think about. You're going to get into that vehicle and it's going to say, Claudia, it's Wednesday. Your family usually goes to X restaurant. Do you want me to make a reservation? Is it the same people? It just knows your pattern. It knows you so well.
Let me just tell you, I'm very much looking forward to the day that our car doesn't have in the screen, hello, Matthew. Every time I
Right.
get in the car, I'm like, it's my phone connected. Why does it still say hello, Matthew?
Who's Matthew?
My husband.
Okay, I figured as much, but
at least,
at
yeah.
least
Oh,
it's not your lover.
It will. Yeah, I was going to say,
Can you
no.
imagine?
Exactly.
No, I don't give him the...
Keys of
Just
the
let him in the
kingdom.
car.
So the company that you joined is focused on auto?
Yeah, so primarily, although it can be leveraged in anything, and it certainly has.
What is it called?
It's called the Cerence AI. So we are the voice in your vehicle. So we're in about 52% of all vehicles worldwide, especially the
Don't rub
high
on
end.
it. I was in the board of an electric car company that didn't make it so.
Yeah, so you
So
get
I
it.
guess,
It's a very
but
tough
then
industry.
that was what I was gonna ask you. You're in a very established company. There's virtually zero risk your company is gonna go under while you're working there. Maybe the stock price is gonna go down if it doesn't go well, but like you have job security.
That's right.
A company that you've never heard of
I know.
calls
I
you,
was like, thank
and
you.
you're like, okay, so I already took I took a pay cut. Now let me just shake things up again, and I'm
yeah.
gonna go to a company that may not make it. How did you decide this company from the hundreds of thousands, I don't know, companies that are adding the word AI to their name? How do I know this one is one worth putting like my
time.
in?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, one, it had a long history. So one thing about the auto industry that I don't think people appreciate is that it's very traditional, right? And it goes back, a very, very long time. And so Cerence, although new in the sense of like it had just IPO'd in 2019, it was part of Nuance, a much larger company. And so it had a long history of these relationships. So I knew that, okay, they have a long history of these relationships and they do it very well. And so, but yeah, of course, I mean, was I worried? Absolutely, because you hit the nail on the head. I'm at this big company where there's no issues, right? And I'm taking this leap to a much smaller company. But again, I bet on myself. And that has never stirred me wrong. It really hasn't. Like I just had to go and take that leap of faith. And what's the worst thing that can happen?
But wait. This is where I wanted to pause. What's the worst thing that can happen for so many people, including us? I think that I can speak about like us individually and as a team. That's not so easy to say. What's the worst that can happen? So it's all about knowing your value.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because I know that that's a topic that you care about, that you like combining mental health with knowing your value for Latinas, particularly in a time like now,
Yeah.
where everybody's defining our value
so true.
outside and actually putting us as part of risk strategies for companies. What is it? How do you do it? How have you done it? And let's talk about like the playbook of knowing your value.
Yeah. Well, I know that wherever I go, I'm going to kill it, right? That when we talked about that earlier in law school, right? I am going to do everything I can so that people know, not only do I know my value intrinsically, but people externally know my value. And so even if the company, something horrible was to happen, which it's not, and we've been doing great, I could always go back to a law firm, right? So that's when you think about like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I worked so hard, and that is not going to be forgotten. And I have those long-standing relationships that I can always pull on if I needed to. And I think sometimes when people think, oh God, if I fail or if I make the wrong decision, it's like, it's going to determine the rest of my life in some way. I'm going to be marred, right? I'm going to have a scarlet letter. That's so not true. That's not true.
Well, the thing is that, let's go deep into this one, because I think that we have never discussed this piece in the podcast. And so to know your value, you have to start from knowing it so that people cannot devaluate it.
That's right.
And I do think that we have a lot of devaluation going on, like as a community, as gender, as a number of things. If I'm Latina, I'm going to be treated this way and this way and this way. So it's hard to know your value when
You're
like
constantly being dismissed, right?
The
And diminished.
starting conditions are these. Even if you see, and particularly because you see hard work is the way to go, but doesn't get you value.
Well, it's interesting. I love that you touched on that, because there's so many values that we have as Latinas, right? Like humility, resilience, familial, communal, loyalty. We're going to talk about that. That's a big one. I mean, those are great values, because if you think about it, like humility creates empathy. And I think being a good employer, being a good manager, being a good boss, you have to be empathetic. You have to meet people at where they're at. And so going back to like knowing my value, I knew I brought that. Every job I've ever had, people gravitate towards me. People have come, like, I don't know what it is. It's like I'm everybody's psychologist or psychiatrist, but it's because I listen and I help them. And so I knew that whatever company I went into, I would be valued because I would demonstrate that. Now, you are absolutely right. They assumed that they knew who I was, and it didn't align with who I actually am. And you're absolutely right. It comes with, and I hate that. I hate the fact that I have to prove that I'm different than what they think I am, right? Like, oh, they see like, oh, you're, attractive, and you're emotional or whatever, you're all these things, but they don't see that what that actually translates to. Being that person who I am makes me a better boss. I want to talk about loyalty for a second, though, not to because I just want to make sure I hit on this. I probably let loyalty stand in the way many times in making decisions, and probably stayed at places longer than I should have. So it is a double-edged sword. I heard the statistic years ago that Latinos stay at a company on average 24 months longer than the average non-Latino, which is great for employers, but not great necessarily for the employee. So I started telling people, I said, listen, if you weren't working out for the company, I don't know a lot of companies that would let loyalty stand in the way of making a decision to part ways with you.
Yeah.
So you need to look at it from their perspective. You need to look at it through their lens. If it's no longer working for you, move on. A company is a legal construct. It's not a human being. It's not tangible. So why are you giving so much to this?
But I don't know. I feel like it's a combination of, yes, loyalty and loyalty maybe because we are so thankful that we were given an opportunity.
Yes.
But also the risk aversion of, like, I have like a paycheck coming every month. The grass is always greener, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go out. So it's probably a combination of,
But also the value of loyalty. Latinos are literally more loyal to
They
their
are.
families, to their values. We don't change
Yeah.
political parties as much. We don't change
We're
religions.
brand loyal,
We're
right? I
brand
mean,
loyals. I mean, like, we're like loyal. I mean,
Yes.
like, that's the other piece, which
yeah.
is, you know,
Which I
like,
love, by the way.
Me
I
too.
love that. I love that about who we are. I love that about who we are, and we should cherish that. But we also need to recognize when it's not serving us anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not an all or nothing proposition, right? You don't need to suddenly not be loyal anymore. You just have to know, like with anything in life, when it's no longer serving you in that particular circumstance.
Right.
Be loyal to yourself.
But so you realized that you had value because for some whatever reason, magic reason, you were able to say, like, wait, every time I go to a company, I kill it. Every time I go to a place, I generate trust. Every time I go to a place. So how do Latinas, young Latinas, get to that realization of their value? Because we don't know it, because people, like, the gaslight culture, your corporate culture is all about, like,
Yeah.
stereotypes and unconscious biases, and it's hard for us actually to see it if we don't
Yeah.
have role models like you saying it. Like, you need
Yeah.
to flip the script and understand that it's not about being social, it's about creating trust.
That's right. It is about creating trust. I would be disingenuous if I didn't say what the reality is, which is I had to work harder than everybody else.
Yeah, somebody that
You
came
know.
recently said every time I have a Latino or Latina come through like the door to interview, what I see is somebody that to be sitting in front of me had to work double from the person that came
That's right.
right before.
That's
So,
right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I saw early on, especially in the legal field, right, where people were just, there were so many assumptions about who they were because of how they looked, or where they went to school, or the yacht club that their parents belonged to, or all of that nonsense. Pedigree is what I called it. And so I realized that I had to prove myself. And that, unfortunately, was and probably still is the reality for many people, that you're going to have to work harder than the rest. And I hate that. I hate that that's the truth, but that was my truth and probably is the truth for many people. Whereas other people, there's a lot of deference given to them because they come from a different environment.
I think that part of what I want this episode to say is a clear message to all Latinas about the importance of knowing your value, not only by understanding the data and that basically there's absolutely no way a company can hire and sell or supply from without Latinos. So
That's
we're
right.
like in that
That's right.
piece, but also on the pieces that we bring to corporations because of who we are.
That's right.
The loyalty, which translates to this, the social, which translates to that. So that translation is a matter of education and awareness to make sure that you know your value. And then you're able to advocate and promote and all the pieces, which I don't think we have enough of. I don't think we have enough awareness and education and role models of know your value.
I agree. And I would say one of the things that, when you look at companies, like, why do companies fail? I mean, why do companies fail? There's some macro reasons, but the micro reasons oftentimes is because your people are not showing up for you, right? And I think the things that we bring as Latinas, being kind of like treating our teams like our family, people will go to the end of the earth for you if they feel like you're in it with them. And you have to genuinely be in it with them. And so to me, you increase productivity when you stand behind your team, when you stand with your team. And I think that's one of our superpowers that we absolutely bring. And when they start seeing that in droves, because it's the numbers game. They're going to see it. We're here. We're not going anywhere. And it's just a matter of time. And so I think when they see the impact we have internally on the business, it's no longer going to be about you having to prove yourself. They're going to know what you bring to the table.
So I have a last question, which is, you got a playbook early on in your career. What is the playbook that you have now that you would like to share with our audience?
So we talked about kind of going full circle. I'm going to say, don't sacrifice your values. One of the firms I was at, I had a very abusive boss. I mean, he was just horrible. Like, he was just horrible to work with. And I not only decided to leave the firm because it was better for my career, but I also realized I could never work with someone like that ever again. And so don't sacrifice what you know to be true in an unhealthy environment, because it just won't serve you long term. And so the most important thing is just take care of yourself mentally. Just take care of your mental health. Make sure that whatever environment you are in, you're thriving. And if you're not in an environment where you're thriving, go somewhere else.
There's this new, I think people are giving it like fancy names, and I can't remember the fancy names that I've heard, but this theme of if you're with a group of people, and after you are with that group of people, you feel like your energy is down, don't hang out with that group of
right.
people. And then if you are with your certain friends and then you leave really energized and engaged, that's what your friends or people that support you or your people that will bring the best out of you should make you feel.
Right.
So many times we end up just spending the time with people and environments that bring us down, thinking we are the problem.
Right. And I wonder if it's because we're fixated on solving that problem, right? Like so many times you're like, I'm so invested in making this person like me or turning this into a good. Why? How does that serve you?
It's so interesting because I would say, if you would ask me of the key moments that have pushed me forward, they're never pleasant. They're always a challenge.
I'm not saying it has to be easy. Like I tell my kids all the time, like, doing what you love doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy, by no means. So I don't want to suggest that it's going to be easy, because I agree with you. I mean, what's shaped me so much has been those difficult situations. But yeah, so I think it's more about just healthy environments. They may be tough, you may have to work hard, there may be a lot of challenges, but that's different than being in an unhealthy environment where someone's just not a good person.
So now let's talk about AI.
Yes.
I'm very interested in your perspective on how can we actually become good at AI. Like I can tell you, me personally, I'm starting to see all these marketing agents coming up, and I kept hearing the word. And at the beginning, I was like, what does it mean, marketing agent? Then I started researching, and now I'm literally experimenting on, I'm going to just build an AI to post on social media for me and see what it does.
Yeah.
Because I saw this post from a guy that said, my entire marketing team is 40 AI agents that he built that are connected to HubSpot and to LinkedIn and to Instagram. And it blew my mind. But then I felt like I can't really guide a team or even assess if they're doing a good job if I don't have hands-on experience of what it takes to build an AI agent. And it seems like it's easy because I'm doing it in a low-code, no-code type of tools. But what would you say? How can people, Latinas, get their hands on tools that will make them like ideal employees or entrepreneurs or users or builders of AI tools?
Buy some books. First off,
which ones?
Well, oh my gosh, it's a good
question. The machine experiment.
Yeah, got one. Exactly. That's
the
like
machine experiment.
Yeah, I mean that's one that everybody's kind of turning to. Take some courses. LinkedIn Learning has some great courses on AI and leveraging AI, whether it's for your team, whether it's you personally. And so I've taken some certifications. That's an easy one because
there is a section from Scott Galloway.
Yes, that's exactly. And so I just think one of the things that has really served me well is going into these niche areas. I tell people, if you want to be indispensable, be indispensable. Learn about niche areas. And I think AI...
Learn about
what?
Niche. A niche
area.
I think that because it's so new still for so many people, it's a level playing field if you think about it, right? It is a level playing field. How often are you presented with a field at its early stages, right? Yeah. And we don't even know how that's going to shape us. But because of that, that's opportunity.
Yeah.
That's for you to go and learn something, and whether it's coding or non-coding.
Alcohol company. I am literally launching an alcohol company on AI.
Yeah.
I'm going to build a tech company that sells alcohol, not an alcohol company.
Right. Well, most companies now are tech companies, right? I mean, it would be, if you haven't changed that focus, then you're behind the times. Right. But most companies are tech companies now.
But it's fascinating. It's I think it's late, like that. I'm late, but it is true.
You're
that
not late.
Yeah, no, you're not late, but we will be late if you don't get on it.
Okay, let's finish this podcast.
There's a I think it's by Jeffrey Moore. There's a book called Catching the Wave. I think it's called Catching the Wave. It's all about all these companies when Blockbuster was presented with Netflix, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they turned down that deal. And, Netflix obviously then took off because they just didn't see the vision of where
Yeah.
it was going. And I think so many companies are at this inflection point where do I go down this path? And there's a lot of fear, right? Because they're like,
Right.
well, then what does that mean for me?
Right.
Like lawyers are afraid.
And to be fair, I mean, like my husband is launching a research in a couple of weeks that interviewed Americans and Latinos as part of that. That's say 78% of the respondents are afraid of AI and want it to slow down.
Yeah.
And to be fair, a lot of the jobs that will come from the marketing agents that, like we're going to be replaced probably are going to be hitting us. So
That's absolutely
what's the
right.
message?
So, the thing about that's true. That's going to happen. You can't change that. Like, I think that ship has sailed, as they say. So there's going to be, we need to reskill people. I mean, we absolutely need to reskill things. It's going to be, and this is where Latinas, this is kind of phenomenal for us. It's going to be about the soft skills. It's going to be about the subjectivity. And you can't replicate that.
The caring, the subjectivity, the soft skills, but also because we're so entrepreneurial, get your act together, not only kill it as a student and build a network, but also start reskilling yourself because we're so entrepreneurial. Start looking at, okay, so what is it that you like so that you can start getting
That's right.
reskill yourself because we don't know exactly where
Right.
what
Where
the
it's gonna go.
responsibility of companies will be.
Last question. If you could give yourself advice looking back to when you were around 30 years old, I don't know, what were you doing at 30 years old? You had a kid and you were graduating law school?
No. I was already practicing law for a few years on the partnership track, killing myself, if you will. I mean, like just working really hard. At that point, I had two kids.
Which advice would you give to that mother of two killing herself?
Yeah. Don't be so hung up on what people think.
Okay.
Yeah.
The race is only with yourself.
Correct. That's right.
Jennifer, I cannot be more grateful for your time and your wisdom and sharing with us and the vulnerability as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing because it's pretty phenomenal. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. We love
Thank
it.
you for the opportunity.
We do. Well, and I think that with advice and wisdom, we're going to be able as a community to lead and succeed.
A la Latina!